Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. It's Liam Hartree here today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm very honored actually to bring a very special guest to today's episode. Today's guest is Mr. Gary Clarke, who is the founder of UK's Strongest Disabled Man, the first disabled strongman competitor in the UK. This man is an inspiration, is a pioneer. If you don't mind me saying that, Gary, that's the way I look at it, and has obviously achieved some incredible things in his personal strongman achievements, but the impact he has had on strongman in the UK is second to none. So, as always, we're not only going to be talking about sports itself today, but we'll be going a little bit deeper into the mindset that it takes to achieve your dreams, how anything is possible, all those sorts of good topics. So, Gary, like I was saying before we started recording, it really is a pleasure to finally be here with you, and I appreciate you making the time for this, to be honest.
Yeah, no worries. The pleasure's mine, Lee. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, obviously, at the moment, things with disabled strongman in the UK is going from strength to strength. It's going very well, but obviously, it wasn't always like this. Now, I'd like to actually go back in time, and with this, I see it as two sides. There's your life personally. There's the impact you've had on strongman, and the way that these things interconnect. So going back to your early years and everything, Gary, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from, what your life was like in the beginning, and if sports was always on the horizon for you, or if it was something that came along a little bit later, please?
Yeah. I'm from Chard Somerset in the UK and England. I was always pushed to do things. I always did sport at school. That was always a big thing. I went to a special school in Taunton. So every year we used to do the athletics at Norman Camp, which is the local marine camp. And if we were good enough, we qualified to go to Stoke Mandeville for the nationals. That was for athletics. So we did running, believe it or not. We did shot put, discus, javelin. The club event was a big thing in those days. And I guess that's where my competitive streaks began, really.
Absolutely. So sports was always there. Now, obviously, with disabled strongman itself and your competition in that sport, some people will know the answer, some people who won't. But just in case anyone is hearing this story for the first time, can you fill us in a little bit on the nature of your disability personally, if that's all right? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm honest and open about it. I'd rather people ask me questions than make assumptions. I was born with cerebral palsy, so my mum had me 3 months early, I believe. So I was started off life in an incubator, but like Hercules in the crib, it broke out of that, and um, here I am today.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So, another thing I think is relevant to touch on here, Gary, with the mindset side of things, you were saying about the fact that you were pushed to compete in sports, you were pushed to sort of challenge yourself from the sound of it. So, was that very much your parents' attitude to, for want of a better term, not let this be something that holds you back? And
Absolutely, 100%. My parents are my driving force in me. They always pushed me to do things and said you can achieve things. And I always grew up with the catchphrase, no such word as can't. And it's been very true in my life. And I've always, like I said, I've always been pushed to achieve things and, you know, um, try things and go forth and go on to great things, really. I mean, I've never sat back and felt, oh, well, me, I'm disabled. Never in a million years. Once I've achieved one thing, I'm going to achieve the next thing. And I think um, because disabled or adaptive strongman, whatever you want to call it, is so hard. I think that's the metaphor for where I've come from, where I am now. Really, it was just important for me to bring it to this country to say to other people, yes, you can do these things. And every sport is a metaphor for its participants, and all the guys are phenomenal. I'm just so proud to be able to put on a platform so we can all show people what we can do because it balances so many stereotypes.
absolutely. That's a powerful description, actually, Gary. The sports being a metaphor for life. So, before we jump into strongman itself, one other thing about your early years. How would you say that the perception towards people with disabilities in general, and I know this is quite a big question, so we'll have to narrow it down a little bit, but I'd imagine you've seen some changes with people's awareness, with people's viewpoints, and so forth over your lifetime. As I say, I know it's a big question, but would you mind sharing one or two of those changes that you've seen? Maybe one you like, maybe one you don't like, or something along those lines?
It's a hard question to answer because I've always been determined. I mean, I'm 47 now, so I've been training for 30 years, believe it or not. And 30 years ago, there was no like inclusive fitness or any of that sort of stuff. The gym was up a flight of stairs. You had to go up and, or it wasn't accessible or any of that, any of those things. So, but me being me, I just got on with it and just whatever was in front of me, I found a way of doing it. So I was able to adapt and overcome, for want of a better phrase, even in the early days. So because I was so passionate that I wanted to start lifting weights, so I went into my local gym at an early age, and like I said, it wasn't accessible. It was up a flight of stairs and that kind of thing. So I just made it work, and I just went on from there. Really, I linked up with a few guys that were very helpful to me in the early days. Still remember them now, still see them now, and we always go back to the early days. It's a very special time. The last Britons actually was at the same place as I first trained. So I'm kind of sat there with Magnus for Magnus at another show that I've organised. The place I started training, it was a very special moment, and I'll never forget that. So, but I've always tried to adapt to whatever I've got.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to hear about those early years and the way that your face sort of lights up as the memories come back to you and everything.
I'm very passionate about it. Very passionate about it.
Well, that's good. I mean, the world needs more of that, Gary. I mean, there's so many people just going through the motions with things. People need passion. But anyway, that's another story. So obviously, you mentioned these other sports that you were doing. But when it came to weightlifting, when it came to that first gym that you mentioned and everything, what actually sparked that particular interest in you in terms of weightlifting, strongman, and
I
everything?
think I can remember being inspired by strength very early age. I can remember watching World's Strongest Man back in the 80s when Jeff Capes was there. You had John Paul Sigmason, Bill Kazmaier, and then later on, obviously Magnus Burr, who won the World's Strongest Man 4 times. And John Paul Sigmason also won the World's Strongest Man 4 times. I grew up watching those guys and very inspired by it. And I said to my grandmother, I said, one day now I'll be doing this. And she kind of laughed. And I hope she's looking down at me now and seeing what I'm doing, because I am actually doing it. So I'm very proud of that fact. And me and a load of other people do it, and we're phenomenal people and athletes, and we do it for first and foremost because we enjoy it, and if we happen to inspire in the process, it's all to the good, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you definitely do inspire in the process, Gary, and as do the athletes that you've given these opportunities to. We'll come to that. Now, you mentioned some of these names that inspired you, and I'd imagine that since that time you've met some of them. I know we're jumping forward in time a little bit, but I just have to ask: have you ever been sort of starstruck in those moments of meeting some of your idols?
um I guess Magnus in the beginning, but like we're friends now. We've known each other 15 years. But yeah, they're just all down to earth guys. I've met Bill Kazmaier. I've not met Jeff Capes, but he did sponsor me back in the day because he went to school with my dad's old boss, I believe. So we kind of had a bit of correspondence there, but I've never actually met Jeff. But I'd like to at some point, yes. But they're just down to earth people. Um, Obviously, I've not have a never have a chance to meet John Paul Sigmason because he passed away, unfortunately. But I just remember him because he was so charismatic, and he really was. It was himself, Kazmaier and Capes were the three early pioneers of strongman. I believe they really brought it to the forefront because they were so charismatic. You know, and John Paul was some of his phrases are still quoted in gyms today. I'm a Viking, and there's no point in being alive if you can't do deadlift. Those kind of things, they still resonate in a lot of the gyms today. Still hear it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's a wonderful thing because it shows the people who've inspired you, and then obviously you've gone on to inspire others. It's the ripple effect, if you like, that really resonates with me from your life. Now, coming back to your own strongman achievements, I mean, in those early days, or in whatever timeline you regard your early days to be, was it? Um, can you share with us some of the challenges you may have experienced as well as some of the positives, or just to get a feel for what your early years training and possibly competing were like in the very beginning? Because you're doing all of this now, but it really was humble beginnings, wasn't it, Gary? So can we talk about that just a little bit more, please?
Yeah, I first went to Iceland for World's Strongest Disabled Man in 2011. I was invited out there, and it was just, I don't know if you've ever been to Iceland, but it's a beautiful place. It's just so robust and rugged, and it's a hard place to live, and it's created a culture of people that aren't afraid to work and use their hands. You know, Iceland's very much about, in the past was very much fishermen and farmers and farriers and iron workers, because they lived off the land. They were hard people. They were hard workers. You know, they trained, and I think a lot of that culture has been passed on to the generations that do the strength sports. You know, Magnus Furr, he won't mind me saying, but he worked on a farm when he was a young boy. I think it was his grandfather's farm, and I think John Paul Sigmarsson did the same thing. You know, all these, it's kind of embedded in Icelandic culture. And when I went out the first time, you really do see that. You see relics of the past. You know, it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. You know, I've been fortunate enough to. I think I've been 8 or 9 times now. You know, I'll never forget the first one, the first World's Strongest Disabled Man I went to, because it was just so surreal. You know, I'm here with Magnus, my sporting idol, and I'm driving around getting stuff for the show that we're gonna do. You know, it was such a privilege to be there, and I'm not trying to crawl up anybody's ass or anything like that, but I'll just say it as I see it, because you know that's moments that I'll never forget in my life, and I feel very honoured to be a part of that.
Absolutely, well, it's incredible. And yeah. Funny enough, that was one of my questions of places that strongman has taken you that you wouldn't have gone if you weren't competing. So we've touched on that as well. But do you regard that to be perhaps your proudest moment or one of your proudest moments in your strongman career? And are there any others that are your favorite memories, if you like, the ones that stay with you the most?
I'm very proud to be the UK's first disabled strongman, but I'm one part of a big puzzle. You know, we're all working together to help the sport grow. I mean, Martin and Becky are doing great things as well, and we're all working together to make the sport grow and to have more competitions too. So athletes like myself and all the other guys can really show the world what we can do. You know, because adaptive or disabled strongman, like say whatever you want to call it. It's all hard and heavy. There's no tokenism involved in it at all, you know. And the thing that I like about disabled strongman is you can either lift the implement or you can't. You know, it is a hard and heavy sport, and fair play to the guys that do it because they're phenomenal. You know, it's just fantastic to be involved with.
Absolutely. Well, the community side of things really strikes me from what you're saying, and we will come back to that as well. Now, we've touched on a couple of your proudest moments there with visiting Iceland and these different things. Now, when it comes to, and I'm looking at this next question from the positive side, but when it comes to overcoming challenges, obviously that's the theme of your life. It's the theme of the sport of strongman and what you do. Now, when it comes to a particular competition or a particular, even a particular session in the gym where something didn't go to plan, I'd imagine that happens often, but in terms of how you overcame a particular challenging scenario, as I say, in a competition in the gym, there might be more than one. This is in your personal strongman journey now, and perhaps a lesson you learned from overcoming that particular challenge, if that makes sense. I'm waffling this one, sorry, but you get what I mean. Are there any that come to mind with that particular side of things, Gary?
I remember that the recent competition I did, Static Monsters, in October last year. It just I've really felt good going into it, and I hadn't felt this good for a while. And I just carried on my training, and I thought I'm not really expecting too much because I'm really back on coming back on the rise again in terms of my own performance because I hadn't done particularly well at the Britons, which is fine. So I regrouped and came back for statics, and I did reasonably well considering I only had like 6 weeks training for that. But you just keep if anyone's struggling in the training, just keep plodding on. And sometimes we make mistakes. It's not gonna You're not gonna get PBs every week, especially in the beginning. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take time to build up, but just keep persevering and don't let anybody tell you you can't do something because you can, and you just got to believe in yourself and go forward, really.
Absolutely. It was a powerful message, an
I
inspiration.
hope that made sense.
Oh, it does. It does absolutely. And as well as making sense, it also opens up another wonderful topic, which is obviously the mental side of things. And I'll touch on that for a moment. Now, you mentioned about believing in yourself. Now, looking at yourself personally, Gary, in terms of competition and in terms of everything you've achieved, I'd imagine you went through a process with that. What I mean by that is realizing you could take strongman so far and then realizing you could take it further. But most of the time, when I speak with athletes, they go through that process of, as you say, the first thing is enjoying it. Obviously, that's the most important thing. But then going from, okay, I enjoy this to actually, I can take this a long way. Can you share with us from a mental perspective, if, what's going on inside of you, some of the process that you went through with that? Because it's not an overnight thing, if you get what I mean with this, when it's something that people have to transition of, okay, maybe I could win a local competition, okay, maybe I could win something bigger again, maybe, it goes through phases. And I'm just curious what that process was like for you, because anyone who goes through that process has to have a lot of self belief, a lot of fortitude, a lot of mental strength. But in your situation, as well as having a strong body, you have to have a very strong mind, and well, and you still do to do that. So, if I'm making sense with this one, the levels of belief that you would have had to go through, can you share with us what that process was like for you, please?
Well, you have to believe in yourself, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere in life, are you? And it just comes down to the old cliche, positive mental attitude. If you've not got that, then you've not got anything because everything in life starts with a motivational thought, doesn't it? And then thoughts become things, and things become actions, and we go on from there.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's something I like to touch on with sports in general because the mental side of things I feel is often not talked about enough, or if it is talked about, it can be talked about with certain cliches and made to sound very sort of mysterious and things like that, whereas it does come down to simple foundations. So I like to put those out there for people, regardless of competing in adaptive strongman or competing in anything. I mean, some of these lessons apply to business, to education,
Exactly,
other things.
exactly. It does. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the same. He applied his philosophy in bodybuilding to his other things in life, and look what he's gone on to achieve. Great things. You know what I mean? It's the same process of self belief, discipline, work hard, and you will achieve.
Mm. And when you say thoughts become things and everything, do you use any of those other techniques like the self affirmations or visualizing or any other things to reinforce that
I
positive?
do use positive self talk because I think that's very important, especially for me, because I have days where I'm not so good. But then you keep reiterating to yourself, yes, you can do this and you will do this. You have a goal in mind, set the goal out and achieve it by bite sized chunks. Sometimes it's not going to go according to plan. So you take a step back, but then you might take 2 steps forward. You know, just believe in the process, believe in the programming, and you'll achieve your goals, providing you set on the right path.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful, wonderful. Sort of distilled wisdom there, basically, Gary. That's what I'll say about that because things that
And
you.
every day we're learning, Liam. Every day we're learning.
Oh yes, well, the process never stops. I know particularly with these kind of things, there's never a point where we get there. Whatever there is, there's always the next step. So I
Yeah.
internally and externally. So I understand that very much. So obviously, coming into your impact on strongman beyond your personal achievements in terms of helping the other athletes and contributing and really being a pioneer, as I said at the beginning. What was the realization where you thought, okay, this is well and good for myself, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, if you like, for a moment, but then you thought, okay, I can have this impact on other people, I can help people, contribute to them, and so forth. What was that process like for you, please, Gary?
I saw it in Iceland the first time that there's no reason why we can't have this sport in the UK. And I spoke to Magnus, and he said, "Gary, you've got to do something in your own country." So finally, after I finished my degree in sports coaching, we got down to doing the first ever Britain's Disabled Strongman show in Stoke-on-Trent in 2015. And it's kind of evolved from there, really. Um,
Well, yes, it has. Yes, it has. So let's touch on that for a little bit because you look back on it like that. I mean, I know you're very humble, but it's an amazing thing to pull off to really make something happen that hasn't happened previously. I mean, in very simple terms. So with that, in terms of pulling the event together, can you share with us a little bit of behind the scenes of that first event, of how you pulled it together, if you met any opposition? I mean, I don't have a really narrow perspective, but just some of the things that stayed with you to make something happen for the first time, basically.
I can remember the first, God bless him, the first phone call I made was to a guy called Les Wiltshire, who's just recently passed away. So I'd like to pay a tribute to him. But he was the guy who did all the emceeing, all the comparing for the shows that we did. And he said, "Well, Gary, it's a great idea, and I'll help you with it, and we'll go forward with it." And he was a very good sounding point. I'd speak to Les for hours sometimes about strongman and life, and he was very much a great help, especially in the beginning shows. And it was just a pleasure to put it together. And I managed to get a good sponsors in the first show with Impy with because my sister worked there. They were like a wet room specialist kind people, so they did adapted bathrooms and stuff. So I've managed to get the sponsorship for the first show there, and it was just a pleasure. And to see the guys actually coming out and performing on the first ever Britain's, the first ever disabled show in the UK, it brought a tear to me. I'm getting choked up now thinking about it because it's almost 10 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was a very special moment for myself and for everyone involved. It's just like I say, it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to do it.
Well, it's a wonderful thing, Gary. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to give those people opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise, basically. And I know, obviously, these things are a team effort, and there'll be
Absolutely, 100% team effort.
there'll be other people involved, and we will give a thank you to some people later on as well. But nonetheless, just for now, with the that concept of giving people the opportunity that they never would have had, it's absolutely incredible. So, can you share with us? I know this is a big question again, but can you share with us a little bit about the evolution of adaptive or disabled strongman in the UK? Because no pun intended, but it has gone from strength to strength, really.
Yeah.
So, and obviously you've been witness to that evolution. So, can you share with us a little bit about the progression of the shows, particularly from your point of view, behind the scenes? Again, the things that people don't see and the work that goes into it behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of the sport is evident because in the first show, we had 10 athletes and we only had men then. It was only one class. Now we have, I think, the most I've had at one of my shows is 28, and we've got seven classes. In the beginning, when I first went to Iceland, it was everyone in together and nobody was categorized. Now we got categories, we've got rules and regulations, thanks to Becky and Martin Ty, DB Disabled Strongman, doing a brilliant job. So they run England's, which we never had before. They're going to run other qualifiers as well, which all leads into Britain's, and then Britain's leads into the world event, whatever form that might take. So in the evolution of the sport's been massive, and it's so proud to be involved with it still.
Absolutely. Well, obviously the evolution it does speak for itself really, but I still wanted to get your take on it being so involved from the beginning to now.
Yeah.
It does speak for itself. So it's a wonderful thing. Now, of the shows that you have set up so far, the best is yet to come, I'm sure. So we'll talk about that as well. But of the ones that have happened, do you have a favorite show out of all of them, or are they all equally special to you in a different way?
They're all equally special in different ways, you know. That's certainly true because um, in some ways we try to improve every year, and in a lot of ways we have. But some ways it needs to take another leap now as well. So this year certainly it will. I can't say too much at the minute, but it certainly will this year. So every year we try and grow the sport and make it better, you know. But it's got to come out of jar this time. So we're looking to move it away somewhere, which would be good. But there's a few irons in the fire with that, which is fine. So we shall see what develops with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing, from the behind the scenes perspective and everything, you mentioned earlier about seeing these people um, achieve their dreams basically and have opportunities that they wouldn't have, and you obviously felt choked up. So I'm mindful of that. But when you do see somebody who would never have had the opportunity, but they have the opportunity because of yourself and because of the people that you work with achieve a particular feat, and when you're watching that, what does go through your mind in that moment when you see an athlete achieve something that they may have been told was impossible, or they may have never believed in themselves they could do previously, but they do it obviously due to their own work ethic and everything, but also because you've given them the platform and the other people involved have given them the platform. So it is a team effort. I'm just putting that in there. But is that something you can put into words? What does go through your mind in a moment like that?
The thing that people need to remember is that all of our athletes, like everyone, have got their own unique story, and some of these guys have they've been through hell and back. You know, I'm not going to go into details, but when you see somebody achieve a goal, you know who's had it hard for whatever reason. You know, it just it's just mind-boggling. You know, life doesn't get a lot better than that. It really doesn't. And then when you see somebody do that and achieve, and they're so happy, you think, well, you know, you must be doing something right. You know, obviously, every year we try to improve, and every year we make mistakes, and we go back and we go forward, and that's how it goes sometimes. You know, but when you see somebody achieve what they wanted to achieve, it just it's phenomenal. It really is, and it's just I just keep saying it's a pleasure to be around. You know, strong, disabled strongman, adapted strongman, whatever you want to call it. I've said that again. Sorry, I keep saying that, but it's my life, and it's a life that it's a path that I've chosen, and I get as much of enjoyment as watching other people achieve than what I do achieving things myself. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful message. And I think that helping or contributing to people's lives is one of the highest aims we can aspire to in life, really. And I really, really respect that a great deal. I mean, that's very altruistic and quite deep. On a practical level, Gary, I also have to ask how you how you manage your time, basically. What I mean by that is, I understand that you work, you promote these events, you compete. Obviously, you train extensively to compete and so forth. So it's a lot to fit in, and I think that one of the things that people often say about achieving goals, they say, "Oh, I don't have time for it." But one of the things is it was whether or not you make time for it. And I'm curious about how you personally do that. If you don't mind sharing a little about that, please.
I work as a support worker for people learning differences. I don't know whether you know that, but I probably do probably between uh 40 and 45 hours a week. And then obviously I do my training and I do organize the shows. Obviously meal prep and eating and that kind of thing is all part of the plan. But in first lockdown, I actually taught myself to weld. So I've been doing a lot of that as well. So that's in between everything else. So yeah, I'm pretty busy, but I like to be busy because it keeps me focused.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, it does. That's a valuable lesson in and of itself, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean there is time. Like you said, you've got to make time. It depends on how much you want to achieve the goal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very much priorities and everything is it is as simple as that. I do that as well. It might sound too simple, but I often personally break it down as sort of A, B, C, D, whatever is a priority. That's an A. I need to get to that. That's a B,
Yes.
etc. Because otherwise you don't prioritize these things, and you have to. So it's very important lesson there. Now, as we come into the future, I'm not sure how much you can say about certain things, so I'm mindful of that. But particularly, goals and setting goals, having clear goals, has been something that's come up during this talk. It's very important for people. So, in terms of your goals, and as I said earlier, there's two sides. There's your goals as a competitor and your goals as a promoter or event organizer, however you frame that. I'm not sure, but in terms of those two sides of things, I don't mind how far ahead in time you'd like to go, if it's something in the near future, if it's something in the further future. And again, I'm not sure how much you can say, but as we said earlier, the journey, it never ends. There's always continuing improvement in all of these levels. So can you share with us a little bit about the future personally and in terms of the organization as well, please?
In terms of the show, I like to focus on year, because it's so hard to put together sometimes. There's so many things coming in, and me being dyslexic, it kind of gets a bit jumbled up sometimes. So, for me to have a clear what I want to do, I need to take year by year, if that makes sense. And in terms of my own personal goals, I have got particular milestones I want to hit this year before I get too old and not able to do it anymore. But at the moment, I'm in one piece and fighting fit. So, you know, I've got my first competition in February the 25th. So that's down in Nelsey at the gym in Nelsey. So we shall be putting on a good show there. Hopefully, training's been going well. So that's all good. I'm just delighted to still be lifting, because lifting is my passion first and foremost before promoting and any of that stuff. I still like to lift weights. That's the core of me, and that's never going to change. It's always going to be there. So, but I just love it. It's the best thing I ever did when I was 16, and I haven't looked back since.
Absolutely amazing. Well, as I said earlier, I love your passion. I really do, and that's um, obviously that's a valuable lesson for our listeners. But just personally, for me to you, your passion, it's tangible. Even with the distance of this call and everything, I can actually feel that, and it's a very very
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Liam. Sometimes I forget who I am. Sometimes I'm so caught up in doing so many different things. But when I do actually sit down and speak to someone like yourself doing a podcast, and even having a conversation with other people, I remember and I get back to who I am, and it sparks the fire again. But that fire is never gonna leave me. It's always gonna be there.
Oh, good, good. That's the way it should be, Gary. That's a wonderful, wonderful way to be. Now, as we move into the latter phase of this and the last few things to touch on, so that's the future we've talked about, right? Thank you. So obviously, I mentioned earlier about giving a mention to other people who have contributed to the shows, contributed to your journey personally. Now, sometimes when I bring this up, it can be too long of a list to mention everybody. So I don't want to
I think it would be in my case, yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot to miss anybody and put you under pressure. But at the same time, it's nice sometimes to mention people who don't get a mention otherwise, and they're doing a lot of good work behind the scenes. So I try and sort of balance that out a little bit if it's possible. Um, is there anyone you'd like to mention here who's really contributed to your journey, or is it too many names to mention them all?
No, I can mention a few. Obviously, I like to pay tribute to my friend Les, who's no longer with us. He was a massive inspiration in the beginning. I miss him dearly. He was a massive friend to me. Like I said, we spoke on the phone, a few times a week at least. And unfortunately, he's not here anymore. But I know he would want us to carry on in a positive vein, and you know that's how it is. Life can be hard sometimes, but I know Les is watching down on us all, and hoping for the best, I'm sure. Obviously, all the sponsors that have put time and effort in, there's too many to thank. People have been so generous, Um, it's just a wonderful journey, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. Long may it continue. And I will say, Gary, I will say at this point to our listeners and our viewers as well, if there's anyone who would like to contribute to the shows, maybe anyone you're thinking about sponsoring or contributing in any other ways,
Yeah.
please do it, guys, because it's a beautiful thing to be involved in helping people achieve their dreams, which is what you would be doing. But also from a very practical perspective, I mean, things are on the up and up with adaptive.
A massive thank you to all the volunteers and
Mm,
all the referees and people that have contributed over the years. Without you, we couldn't put these shows on. It's as simple as that. Matt McLaren, and Claire and the referees, the helpers, Martin and Becky from GB Strongman. They've been a massive help this year. I couldn't have done it without them. Couldn't have without them all. It's just amazing the strongman family we have, and biggest thank you goes to the athletes because without them we wouldn't have shows. That's the reason why we do it, because we want to showcase what you guys can do, and hats off to you.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hats off to them. I mean, hats off to anyone who's chasing their dreams in one way or another and giving it a go in life. But I must say, even from the stories I've personally heard of some of the athletes you work with on these shows, it absolutely knocks your socks off. I mean, it really does. What some people have been through, it's just that's another story, but it's incredible. So, last couple of things. Do you have any other final words of inspiration for people who are chasing their dreams, working towards goals, whether it's in strongman or, as I said earlier, whether it's in starting a business, pursuing your education, it doesn't matter. But we've touched on a few very nice topics, but I just wondered if there's anything else you would say to those people.
Yeah, I would say whatever your dream is, whatever your goal is, go forward and achieve it, because you'll always have people saying you can't do that and that's a stupid idea. As long as you believe in yourself and it's in here and in here, um, you'll have a good chance of completing your goal. It might be hard in the beginning, but just carry on treading, going forward. You know, when I first started the idea of doing Britain's Disabled Strongman, I was phoning people around and people were laughing, putting the phone down, saying, "Disabled Strongman, are you having a laugh?" And the phone went down a couple of times. So that's the sort of mentality you had in the beginning. But hopefully, those people now are seeing what we're doing and seeing how wrong they were. You know,
Absolutely, yeah. Well, again, it's a very valuable lesson because the only things stopping people are those sorts of things, fears of judgment, fears of criticism, this sort of thing, things that are in your mind and they don't really matter, they seem
Mm.
very real, but they're not. So it's a very valuable lesson there. Yes, you definitely proved the doubters wrong, the supporters right as well, obviously, and long may that continue. So the last thing is a pretty easy one for people who want to reach out to you, connect with you personally, or find out more about the events that you're doing. I know the media presence and everything is getting quite big now, but still, for anyone who's not in the know, how can they approach you for any sort of involvement and everything, Gary?
They can contact me on Facebook. I'm Gary Clarke on Facebook. I'm also Strongman Gary on Instagram. I'm on there. Um, Also, Britain's Disabled Strongman Competition is the Facebook page. Contact me on there. Feel free to message me. It might take a while for me to get back to you, but I'll always get back to you with any questions you want. If you want to get involved, you're very welcome. You know, um, and go from there. Really, I'm always happy to give advice to people. And pass on some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years. Like I said to you, every day we're learning, aren't we, Liam? I'm not saying I'm the answer to everything, but I've certainly got some knowledge I can pass on to people if they wish to take it.
Absolutely. Well, that's a very good way of putting it. I mean, it's often an exchange with these things, isn't it? You share something, you learn something back, and yeah, people have to choose to take it. You can,
Every day is a school day.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's what part of what makes life exciting and an adventure, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, if we knew everything and everything was set, it wouldn't be very interesting at all. So, well, we've touched on some very good topics here, actually. I mean, basically, when I set out to do this with you, I had that in mind of a few fun stories from competing and a bit of inspiration, and a bit of promotion for you, and those three things. And we've ticked those boxes and then some. So. I'm very happy, and I just, well, like I said at the beginning, I just like to thank you for your time and thank you for being,
No, thank you for letting me be a guest on the show, Liam. It's my pleasure.
mine as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.